Hi, I'm Ken,
And I'm Chris,
and we're with ChromaCraft.
and we're going to talk to you about how we want our session to go with ChromaCraft.
So thank you for volunteering. So the first step is to take 2 sheets of paper per participant. They'll fold their pieces of paper into quadrants.
Four quadrants.
And then you take a stencil. Give me a second.
All right.
You create the second one.
So on the first stencil, you're going to draw out 4 different squares on here.
But you can leave it folded just like this. And if you trace that square onto your stencil, let them use a marker. And these don't have to be perfect. Trace your square. And you have this. When you cut and it's still folded together, as long as it's not lined up with the folded edge, when you're done cutting, you have your 4 squares already done. And now you don't have to cut out 4 individual squares.
And with your other part of the stencil, the triangle, you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to have 4 different triangles. So you'll have 4 different triangles. And we use these as our connective tissue when we get to putting together our tessellation.
And the end goal of this project is to get people to make connections throughout our tessellation kaleidoscopic image. Okay, you want to pause it? You've now cleaned up the work area for the participants. All the scrap paper is put into a recycling bin, and we're ready to move on to the next step. So now that you have your shapes, just go to the next one.
Yeah. All right. Squares and triangles here.
So you'll choose 2 different colored markers and outline the shapes with those.
So I'm just going to color on the outside of my squares here.
It doesn't matter how you color these in or what colors you choose. Later on, it'll just make a very colorful tessellation, which looks more like a kaleidoscope. And we'll have paper down on the tables so guests don't need to worry about making a mess. As a volunteer, you can encourage our participants to make little squiggly lines or do something just to decorate their shape in any way that they see fit. But again, it's simpler if they're just trying to use 2 different colors. Okay.
And we expect the cut and coloring around 3 minutes. That's our estimate at this point. But we want them to be comfortable, so if it takes longer, we're okay with that.
I do want to go to the next section. In the next step, you'll take your, you'll keep your shapes piled up, and as a group, there should be about 8 people to a table. As a group, those people will come up with a very open-ended idea or experience to write on their hexagon. This is the center of the tessellation.
We'll have that colored and laminated.
Right. So they'll generate ideas. Let's say the table comes to a consensus that they're going to create a tessellation about what they're going to do over summer. So what are your summer plans? They can phrase that as a question or a statement. So we have, what are your summer plans? Now, they'll take, in this step of the process, they'll take just one of their squares. This becomes a node. And they'll write an idea of what they're doing over summer vacation, or summer break, or they'll write a list. So it works best if they write a list because you can form a lot of connections for a list, which you'll see in the triangle step. So Chris and I will write down our ideas now. You can pause that. So Chris and I are writing down our multiple ideas as a list on our square. And on the next step, we'll be able to start forming the first step in the tessellation. So let's go to the wall. Can we do the wall right now?
Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this up on the wall. So we're just gonna require people to use maybe about 3 inches of tape here, and they might need to stick two pieces on the back. We found that 2 pieces works, and it tends to have a nice hold. One tape we found just kind of comes off the wall. We found that painter's tape works the best. And this, we want to say this one might need
2 or 3 pieces.
Yeah, and it also might need the clear packaging tape as well on the back.
So as volunteers, that might be something you could be doing as people are ready to go to the wall to start taping up their tessellations.
Yeah, and if you find that some of the pieces might be peeling or coming off, be sure to get another piece of tape and try to put that on, because what we don't want is the pieces to be falling up while the sessions are going on.
So I'm going to take my piece.
So we're going to go over to the wall after we have these taped. And we expect the participants to do the same. As when they're finished, we're going to have them connect and put their pieces on the wall.
So we'll want to use the white walls, which will be all the way folded out and all the way across here on the day of the event. So they can stick their hexagon up and then begin to put their squares around the hexagon to create a tessellation.
Just like that.
And hopefully there are enough people to fill up the 6-sided hexagon so that you have squares on each of those sides. The next step is going back to get the triangles, but they want to figure out what the connections are that are being made between them. So for instance, Chris is doing some learning, whereas I'm teaching a design camp at Roper Mountain Science Center. So we might have a connection here. Learning, design camp, so geeky, nerdy summer stuff, where you're teaching and learning.
Yeah. So I'll get a piece of tape for you.
So science nerd stuff. That would go here, and we've made our first connection.
There we go.
Thank you. And if there were another piece over here, let's just say we moved this, and this is somebody else's idea. Going on a Caribbean vacation. Chris is going on a Caribbean vacation. I'm going to France. So we might do travel abroad as our connective tissue. I'll just hold that. There we go. Now our triangles go here, and we have at least one piece of connective tissue. If people are finding that they have multiple things in common, I'll just put that here for now. So we've got really great connections going on here. Let's just say this is moved back up here. I'm going to France. Chris is going on a Caribbean vacation. You can start to create a pathway of triangles that lead out between these two connected areas. So we have multiple things in common. We want to create our pathway. Oh yeah. If you want to get really advanced, you can have our participants create little booklets, fold their triangles in half and glue one side to the other, and that could be tessellated out like this, and taped down. Now your pathway becomes multi-linked in that one area.
And we want to give them options of what they want to do. So if they decide to go with it a certain way, they can do it that way. Whatever works for the participants so they feel comfortable. We want it, again, to make it look like an artwork and for people to make their connections and be able to visualize that.
Okay, so let's do the whole thing. We'll
Okay.
pause that. So at the top, you see the finished tessellation that looks kind of like a kaleidoscope, where people have made their connections between their own specific things that they'll be doing over the summer. And at the bottom, the second phase of this project is once they've finished that written tessellation, they're going to do another one where they can only sketch. They can't write anything. Sketching is the communication, they create their own specific notes for how they meet that central idea, and then they create drawings on the triangles, which connect their summertime fun. So, for instance, if this bottle were here between my trip to the Kennedy Space Center and Michelle's trip to the beer store, over the last summer, I launched bottle rockets with my friends,
And I
as an example.
was also launching rockets with my little girl. So I have 3 little girls launching rockets there. And as if you noticed, these just came off. So volunteers might want to keep just a couple pieces of tape on hand, just in case something like this comes off, just like that. We've been moving pieces back and forth, so when you do that, it tends to lose its stickiness. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible and keep it together. For this one, for the sketching and the doodling piece, they can do 2 squares or 3 squares if they want. Because of them just writing for the first one list we thought would just be enough. But for this one, we want to encourage them to doodle not just 1 square, but they could doodle 2 or 3 squares if they want to do that, and then branch off of that. So they would start with probably just 1 square on the hexagon shape, and then from there they can put their square on a triangle, as long as it makes the connection there. But the idea is to make connections and branch off of other people's ideas.
And if you didn't get any of this, we'll be there on that day to help train you before the event begins and to work with our up to 80 guests in our station.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.